going to give it the stringencies of that, and then what came out, I'm going to give it the stringencies of the other male and female. So
why can't you just, if you're doing with two things, say it's a sfek or then matter it instead of going
No. Sfek works differently. Sfek is when each one, even if you say that it's this, but never, even that is not necessarily so. Here, I have two things that each one has an independent suffix, and I have to be strict about both of them. So it doesn't. It's not like stackable. It's
non-stackable.
Right. Okay. Hamabakeres shehipila. If it's giving birth the first time, and it's a miscarriage by an animal, my taima, we said that you can throw it to the dogs. Amar Avika Breder Avami Reiv Behemas Yildas Davar HaKadosh B'Bechayra. Majority of animals give birth to something that one second, that give birth to something that should be eligible for a sacrifice, for a firstborn sacrifice. Umiyat behemas, but the minority is davar she'ena kadosh b'bechayra, something that's not eligible to be a sacrifice. Ma'iniu nidba. Nidma is an animal that's not the same as the mother, like we spoke. A sheep gives birth to a goat, or a goat gives birth to a sheep. Those animals are not acceptable as sacrifices. So that's rear. Okay, so what? But then we go on. We say v'chola yoldis mechza zachar mechza nekeves, and because the statistics are that it's 50% male, 50% female. Okay.
The firstborn.
I assume all children.
We're
talking about a firstborn, right? Yeah. So now I have 50% could be female. Here we have a stackable suffix. So if I attach the rear cases onto the 50% female, so the females are not considered firstborns. It's only the male that's the firstborn sacrifice. And then I also have the possibility that maybe it was a nidma. Maybe it's an animal that's not similar to the mother. So samach miyat leninba lemechtzen nekeves. Miyat to nidma. I am going to attach the minority of the nidma the non-similar animals to the 50% of females. And now the firstborn animals are, the bechar is only a minority, because even if it's very rare, but it's still 51% together with the females. However, b'makdashim to cover, but if it's a child of a korban, then I have to bury it. I can't throw it to the dogs. We just explained why you can throw a placenta to the dogs, even though it could.
Non-korban.
We just explained by a firstborn animal you can throw it to the dogs because we don't consider it a firstborn, because it could have been a female, and even if it was a male, but could have been a nidma. Over here it's the parent was a korban. So my taima, what's the reason for this? Ruba bar mikadashu, the majority is eligible to be a korban. Why? Because female animals can also be korban. It's only by bechar that you can't have a female. But it could be a shlamim. So the only possibility is that it's a nidma, but that's rare. That it's an animal that's not similar. So therefore, this has to be buried. Ve'in kaiver naisa.
It has to be buried because it may be a male.
Because it may be a male or a female.
Assume 50% are male and 50% are female.
But even if it's a female, it needs to be buried because its parent was a korban. So this is holy. Here we said, Ve'in kaiver naisa. Abaya v'Rav Adamrit Abayu. It's really supposed to be the next piece of the Gemara. It's the introduction here. In Kaivanasa, it's supposed to be. In Kaivanasa, Parshas Drachim, Ve'in Tel Naisa B'ilam Pnei Darkei Amar. You don't bury it on the crossroads, and you don't hang it on the tree. Abaya v'Rav Adamrit Abayu. Abaya and Rava both say, Kol davar sheyesh bei refuah, anything that has any health properties, ein by mishum darkei amari. There's no problem of superstitions in that. If there's some explainable health benefits. Ein by refuah. Yesh ben mishum darkei amayri. If there's no health benefits to it, then it's considered superstitious. V'hatanya, started in a brisa. Ilan shemashe peirosav, a tree that's losing its fruits, the fruits are falling off early. It needs copper or something. Saikre besikra. Oh, look at that! You painted red.
Oh, wow.
Maybe that's the where they get the red from. Could be they came from copper. Isn't that interesting? Retainai ba'avanim, and you weigh it down with stones. Bishlem retainai ba'avanim. It makes sense that you weigh it down with stones. So that it should lose its strength. What we're hoping is that it's giving off too much fruit and it's not able to hold all the fruit. So if you weigh it down with stones, it's going to give less fruit, and those fruit it will hold. Why can you paint it with red? It's dark yamayri. It says, well, it's just you put a red thing on it and it's going to resolve your issues. It says, no, it's not dark yamayri. People are going to see that this is ill, the tree is ill, and they're going to daven for it. They're going to say, "Oi, Eibishter, fix that tree." Kedetanya, as it's taught in the Bais.
Hope they don't daven in front of the tree.
Tami Yikra, that you'll call, Tami, this is talking about the Mitzvah. Call to him that he's Tame. So tzarech le'diel l'rabim. He has to notify everyone, and the public will ask for mercy. Anything that any occurrence that happens to someone, you let people know, and then they daven for you. Amar Avina.
Huh?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's a human compared to a tree.
That's interesting.
But if you look at them,
Kiman talinan kufsa b'dikla.
so pray for trees.
According to which opinion do we hang a kufsa? Doesn't just mean a cluster? Cluster of dates? Yeah.
Unripe dates.
Unripe dates. Kaman ki aitani. You do it according to this opinion that says that you ask for compassion. Because people will see it hanging there and they'll know that this tree needs help. Hadran Allah, be'ema makshab li neder. Okay, we'll start the next parak.
Wait, we don't have a party?
Rennie, go get a cookie.
What happened to all the coffees?
Just as a short
Some
thing,
people drink them.
it's talking about
It's upstairs. They
darkening
have upstairs now.
Oh, they moved it?
So it says
Yeah, they have upstairs.
that there's untested practices, that there's no logical rationale, but if it's effective, based on proof that it works, even if there's no scientific rationale for its effectiveness, then it's okay.
Very interesting.
So even if it doesn't make sense, but you see people get
Right.
better from it.
So that's spiritual healing.
Right,
Like anything.
right,
Tree healers.
right. The
It's a good job.
I've heard rabbis, medical doctors talking, and they say, "Oh, this sort of alternative medicine is idolatry. It comes from idolatry," which it maybe comes from idolatry. Whatever spiritual healers they had in Europe and it got brought over. But nevertheless, could be. It doesn't mean that it's forbidden. Could you have to look into this? Could be just because. Just because someone that was an idolater thought of it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. I'm not saying any of these things work, but it doesn't mean it's idolatry.
No, it's just like this a lot of medicine we take that's actually treif medicine, but you're allowed to take. I think amoxicillin is treif.
That has
and
to
you give
do.
it to like every kid.
That has to do with if it's
Achila?
derech achila. Yeah, if it becomes a derabanan. If it's not something that's normally eaten, it becomes a derabanan. And then a chayla ein by sakana is allowed derabanan. So that's why it becomes permissible. Okay, so we're talking about shechting the parent and the child in the same day. A special halacha. You're not allowed to shech the parent and the child in the same day. The Mishnah says that this applies bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz. It applies in the land of Israel, And it applies outside the land of Israel. It's not just a temple law. B'fnei Bais or shlei b'fnei Bais, whether the temple is existing or not. The Gemara is going to have to explain why it needs to say that. It doesn't have to do it. B'chulin and Mukdashin, it applies to mundane animals and it applies to karbanos. In other words, you can't shech two karbanos in the same day, mother and child. Ketzad. We're going to go through a bunch of examples here. You'll pick up the rule very quickly, but the examples are extensive. If someone shechts it actually means her, according to everyone. It means the mother and the child. Chullin, bachutz, mundane animals outside the temple. So you did nothing wrong other than shechting the second one. Shneim kasherim, both animals are kosher, no problem. However, vasheni seifigas harbaim, the second one, he gets malchus for it because it was the offspring of the can't shech them both in the same day. Let's say kachim bachutz. Let's say it was a karban, and they were both karbanas. You shechted them both outside the temple. So rishon chayav kares. First one, very severe punishment. Kachim bachutz. You're not allowed to shech the karban outside the temple. And shneim psulim. They're both not acceptable as sacrifices because they were karbanas, and they can't be eaten. Karban outside. Shneim seifkin asarbaim. The second one is aisives benai. The first one is malchus because it's kachim bachutz. The second one is not malchus because of kachim bachutz, because it wasn't eligible to be a karban. It was, you had to wait a day. It wasn't eligible to be a karban. However, it has its own problem of being aisives benai. Chullin b'fnei. I'm sorry.
Get the worst.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on over here with the. It says seifkin asarbaim and karis. It could be it's going according to those opinions that you get malchus, all the karis also gets malchus.
What if he then cooked it in the mother's milk? What's that Avera level?
And they ate a new kippah.
I'm going with the Kamleg and the Rabbi. I just want to see how high we can go or how low you can go.
But it has to be simultaneous. The two Averas have to be at the same time.
Right.
No, I'm saying he shechted them both at the same time, and then he goes and cooks them.
Two different people shech it.
It's a different, two different avera, and there's no difference in the law. Now, coming with the Rabbi is like, let's say someone has, he's supposed to get the death penalty. Look, someone murders another person. He shoots him through his shirt into his heart. So he gets a death penalty. He doesn't have to pay for the shirt.
Excuse me, could you explain the phrase "sofeg et harabayim"?
Seifig means he absorbs 40 lashes. Malchus. So that's an expression for lashes. Seifig es harabayim. Seifig is like a sponge.
Sponge, yeah.
So chulin bifnim. Let's say he does it. This was not allowed. He brings two mundane animals into the temple. So shneim psulim. You weren't allowed to do that. Interestingly, you don't get malchus for bringing a mundane animal into the temple. However, v'hasheni seifik asarbam, the second one you weren't allowed to sacrifice because you already slaughtered the mother that day. Kachim bifnim. That sounds perfect. Well, harish and kasher, the first one is good. Upater, and you're exempt. Of course, you're exempt. That's what you're supposed to do. V'hasheni seifik asarbam upasal, but the second one was not eligible. It was too early. You needed to wait 24 hours, or we'll see, overnight, I think. And then you. So there's malchus for the so it's invalid, and there's malchus because you shechted it in the same day. Chulin v'kachim b'chutz. The chulin outside was fine. Mundane outside is fine. However, the second animal was not fine outside. So the rishon kasher upater. The first one is fine. It was chulin. It was the mother. It was the first animal of the family that day. V'hasheni seifik asarbaim apostle. But the second one was kachim b'chutz. You only get malchus once. Because it wasn't eligible. It wasn't really shchuti chutz. It wasn't a sacrifice yet. It was too early. You couldn't shecht it.
I mean, there's no chiyuv on that.
It's only Yosef Espenai. Okay. Kachim v'chulim b'chutz. Let's say the first animal was a sacrifice. You weren't supposed to slaughter it outside. The second one, you were supposed to slaughter it outside, just you weren't supposed to slaughter it that day. Rishon Chayav Karas Apostle. The first one was the sacrifice outside the temple, invalid. Vasheni kosher. The second one is kosher to eat, but you weren't supposed to slaughter it that day because the mother was already slaughtered. Shneim Seifkim Esarbar, both of them get malchus. One because kachim bachutz, and one because oisiv espenai, mother and child in the same day. Chullin v'kachim
On the malchus for one person? For the same person?
I don't know if it's the same person that slaughtered it. Could be two people that
No,
slaughtered
because
it.
I
At
thought
least
you
get
can't
malchus.
give more than 39, so if
Yeah,
you're getting 40
you
times
can't give
2,
39 for the same sin.
You can't give 39
Multiple
twice.
sins you can give.
You get, if a person does two sins, he gets it twice.
So he has to heal before the second.
Yeah,
second
well,
malchus.
probably.
Okay. Otherwise, it's more than 40.
No,
More than 39.
no. What that means is that more than 49 is that the way malchus is done is that the most he's going to get, even if he's a very strong person, is 39. If he's a weak person and he won't be able to handle that, so then we go lower. He will only get 20 or something. The doctors estimate what he can handle, but you can never go over that. Chulin the kach.
39,
Yeah.
22.
So, thanks. I got it.
Chulin v'kachim b'fnim, mundane and sacrifice inside the temple. Shneim psulim. V'hasheni seifik asarbaim. Only the second one gets malchus for Oisiv Espenai. The first one, a mundane animal that's sacrificed in the temple doesn't get malchus. That's the only halacha here that's unique. Everything else you didn't have here, you get the malchus. This is the only one there's no malchus for. Mundane animal in the temple. Kachim v'chulin b'fnim. Harishin is kosher. You have a sacrifice and a mundane animal in the temple. The first one is kosher, upater, of course. It's a regular sacrifice. V'asheni seifik asarbarim upasal. The second one gets malchus, not because it was in the temple. It gets malchus because of Oisiv Espenai. Chulin bachutz ubifnim. You sacrifice one animal outside the temple and one animal inside the temple, and it's mundane and holy. Harishan kosher upata. The first one is supposed to be outside. It's perfect. V'asheni seifik asarbarim upasal. But the second one is inside, and it's wasn't supposed to be inside, so it's pasal. And there's malchus because Oisiv Espenai. Kachim b'chutz b'fnim. You sacrifice the first animal of a sacrifice outside, the second one inside. Rishon chayav kares. Kachim b'chutz. You weren't allowed to do that. Shneim seifkin sarbayim u'shneim psulim. The second one is Oisiv Espenai. Chulin b'fnim b'chutz. Let's say there's chulin that's inside and outside. Well, inside is a problem. Outside is where it's supposed to be. It's just you weren't supposed to slaughter it that day. Harishan pasal upater. You don't get malchus for chulin inside the temple. Second one, it's a kosher animal, but you get malchus for Oisiv Espenai. Kachim b'fnim b'chutz. Let's say the first animal is a sacrifice inside, then the second animal is a sacrifice outside. Harishan kosher upata, that was the way it's supposed to be done. But the second one is malchus for Oisiv Espenai and kachim b'fnim ubachutz. For Oisiv Espenai, but not for a sacrifice because it was too early. You couldn't slaughter that.
So this whole piece is a Mishnah?
It's just a Mishnah, yeah.
Because it doesn't say Mishnah. It's just
It
automatic.
doesn't say, yeah. It doesn't start. Only in the center of the Gemara will it say
half a page.
it's assumed that it's a Mishnah.
What is this?
That says Hadran Allah. It means we will return to you, Behema Maksha, which was the previous chapter. And we say, Bli Neder.